Well, good morning, everybody. We're all ready for an exciting budget and implementation committee meeting. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 9:30. And can we start with the roll call, please?
Of course. Good morning, everyone. I see District 2 is connecting. They're first on roll call. District 2?
Here.
District 3?
Here.
Banning? Beaumont?
Here.
Calamasa?
Here.
Canyon Lake?
Here.
Cathedral City?
Here.
Coachella? Desert Hot Springs?
Present.
Lake Elsinore?
Here.
Palm Desert?
Here.
Palm Springs? San Jacinto? Riverside? Wildemar? We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you join me all in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on to the first item would be public comments. Do we have any public comments for our items not on the agenda today?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. For those on Zoom, if you'd like to make a public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raise hand button. If you're using Zoom on your smartphone, tap your screen, look for the more option and then raise hand button on the screen. And for those of you calling in using the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you'd like to comment. So now we'll move on to item number 5. Any additions or revisions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. And we'll move to the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would like to have an item pulled or request to speak on the consent calendar before we vote on it? See no raised hands, I'll entertain a motion.
Calamasa moves to approve. Beagle second.
A roll call, please.
Thank you. District 2?
Here, yes.
District 3?
Yes.
Beaumont?
Yes.
Banning? Calamasa?
Yes.
Canyon Lake?
Aye.
Cathedral City?
Yes.
Coachella?
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs?
Aye.
Lake Elsinore?
Aye.
Palm Desert?
Yes.
Palm Springs?
Aye.
San Jacinto? Riverside?
Aye.
Wildemar? Thank you. The item passes.
Thank you. First item up is a state and federal legislative update from David Knudsen.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm pleased to provide you with an update on state and federal activities. As we near the end of the current fiscal year, it appears, while not formally announced, the governor and the legislature passed a $267 billion budget on June 14th, meeting their constitutionally required deadline. However, many of the appropriations in the bill still needed additional programmatic instruction in the form of trailer bills and budget bill juniors. And this is what is driving the current negotiations. Last night, the legislature released new budget bill juniors in the state, in the Senate, and the Assembly. These budget bill juniors make changes to the June 14 budget bill, which is currently sitting on the governor's desk. The newly released spending plan would increase transportation infrastructure spending by $1 billion to deliver critical projects for the 2028 Olympics, $1 billion for transit and rail projects, $500 million to advance projects that increase active transportation, $500 million to support critical safety improvements throughout the state, $2 billion in special funds and federal funds for streets, roads, and highways and other project items. The budget does not contain any spending on California's high-speed rail project, and the bill includes conditional spending are dependent on future legislation being enacted by October 10th, 2021. If no legislation, the funding reverts to the general fund. While this budget meets the requirements to enact a spending plan by July 1, significant negotiations will continue with some key expenditures likely approved later this summer through budget trailer bills. People who've participated in the budget process for many years have described the current budget process as very unusual. Turning to the federal update, last Thursday, President Biden announced that he reached a bipartisan infrastructure deal with a group of senators. The deal is a framework that would include water, broadband, and power grid improvements, and would also fund surface transportation reauthorization legislation that includes new spending to rebuild roads and bridges, improve public transit systems, expand passenger rail, upgrade ports and airports, and improve climate resilience. The final details of the framework and how to pay for it is still being negotiated. Once there is a bill introduced in Congress, staff will work to determine the benefit to RCTC projects. While stakeholder groups are optimistic about the president backing the framework, the support he's given won't necessarily ensure the potential agreement can get through Congress. All eyes are now on the House and Senate. RCTC staff continue to hear from congressional offices regarding our community project funding requests. You'll recall that RCTC submitted 13 community project funding requests to congressional offices and state legislators this year. In the executive director's report in the last commission meeting, it was shared that Representative Takano announced that he submitted our $20 million request for the I-15 Express Lanes Northern Extension Project in Eastvale and Hoopa Valley, known as the I-15 Next Project, which will connect with SBCTA's 15 Express Lane project. Representative Calvert also announced that he submitted our $3 million request for the I-15 Corridor Operations Project. Both of these requests were included in the Invest in America Act, the House Majority Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. The bill passed the House's Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and will advance for a floor vote this week. We also have 4 requests under consideration by Senators Feinstein and Padilla, amounting to $12 million. Those include 2 $3 million requests submitted to both Senators Feinstein and Padilla to fund the I-10 Highland Springs Avenue interchange improvements, a $3 million request to Senator Feinstein to fund the Smart Freeway Pilot Project, and $3 million request to Senator Padilla to fund the Reno Valley Marchfield Station improvements. Those selections have not been made public yet, but staff will keep the commission apprised once word is received from the Senate offices. Finally, on June 11th, 2021, Chair Harnick signed a letter to Representative Calvert County Wildlife Refuge that will assist transportation infrastructure by ensuring the federal government meets its obligations to the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan. Supporting this legislation is in alignment with the adopted 2021 state and federal legislative platform, including support efforts or initiatives that expedite the approval of habitat conservation plans or special area management plans for transportation projects. In the past, RCTC have supported legislative efforts that help streamline project delivery, and the Refuge Bill will help continue that effort. On June 15, 2021, Chair Harnick authored with Western Riverside County Regional Conservation Authority Chair Natasha Johnson and Representative Kim Calvert a press enterprise op-ed which communicated the importance of establishing a wildlife refuge in Western Riverside County and its contribution to transportation infrastructure development in the region. This concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, do we have any questions or comments? All right, this is a receive and file, so we will go ahead and move on to item number 8, which is the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program funding distribution and draft fund estimate. And Jillian Quizado.
Good morning, Chair White and committee members. The State Transportation Improvement Program, known as STIP, administered by the California Transportation Commission, is adopted biennially. The last STIP was the 2020 STIP, which commenced relevant work in 2019. Now it's time to prepare the 2022 STIP. The first action that is taken in a new STIP cycle is Caltrans presents the STIP fund estimate, which lays out the estimated STIP funding available in the next cycle and in what years the funds are anticipated to be available. Simultaneously, the CTC begins updating the STIP program guidelines. The STIP is comprised of public transportation account and state highway account funds that are available for state highway improvements, intercity rail, and regional highway and transit improvements. The 2022 STIP consists of fiscal years 2022 to 23 through 2026-27. Next slide, please. The draft STIP fund estimate for 2022 was released last week. The draft STIP fund estimate indicates total new capacity of $727.7 million statewide. Of this amount, Riverside County is expected to receive $32 million. Based on a memorandum of understanding approved by our commission in 1998, new STIP capacity coming to Riverside County will be distributed based on sales tax revenues in each geographic area of the county. Next slide. This table illustrates the STIP share ratios for the last 4 STIP cycles, as well as the upcoming 2022 STIP cycle, which is the subject of today's agenda item. Based on sales tax data in Riverside County, Western County's 2022 STIP distribution should be 78.14%. The Coachella Valley should be 21.42%, and Palo Verde Valley should be 0.44%. Next slide. Based on the draft STIP fund estimate, which indicates Riverside County's new STIP capacity will be $32,249,000, and following the sales tax revenue shares for each geographic area, Western County will have approximately $24.7 million. Coachella Valley will have $6.8 million, and Palo Verde Valley will have $139,000 of STIP funding to programs. The $646,000 you see for planning, programming, and monitoring, or PPM, is an off-the-top amount of STIP funds counties can use to prepare project study reports for capital projects, contribute to staff time, and other administrative expenses. The state's STIP guidelines allow counties to utilize up to 5% of their STIP shares for PPM, but the Commission's policy is to only use 2%. Next slide. Following this committee and ultimately the Commission's approval of this item, staff will work with CVAG to receive its STIP project nominations. Staff will analyze projects in Western Riverside County to develop project nominations for the Western County share and present the completed 2022 Riverside County STIP to the Commission around September or October of this year. Next slide. Once approved by the Commission, staff will prepare and submit the 2022 STIP to the CTC by the December 15th deadline and initiate the Blythe STIP Fund Trade MOU to swap the Palo Verde Valley STIP share for local Measure A funds. Next slide. In summary, staff is recommending the committee approve the 2022 STIP funding distribution among the 3 geographic areas in the county and forward this item to the Commission for final action in July. Next slide. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments? And Lisa, do we have anything from the public?
No, and I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, great. All right, I'll entertain a motion for number 8.
Move approval, Cathedral City.
Second, Palm Desert.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
Beaumont?
Yes.
Calamasa?
Yes.
Canyon Lake?
Aye.
Cathedral City?
Yes.
Coachella?
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs?
Aye.
Lake Elsinore?
Aye.
Palm Desert?
Yes.
Palm Springs?
Aye.
Riverside?
Yes.
Thank you. That item passes.
Thank you. Item number 9, the countywide transit report, fiscal years 2017-18 through 2019-20. And that's presented by Laurel Moluna, please.
Thank you, Chair White, and good morning, committee members. This is a receive and file item for the Countywide Transit Report for fiscal years 2018 through 2019. Next slide. As the RTPA, we have several responsibilities, including the administration and allocation of state and federal funds. Per the Transportation Development Act, or TDA, we are required to monitor and provide recommendations to improve transit performance, and we do this primarily through the short-range transit plans, which were approved last month by the Commission, and also through regular monitoring and coordination with the transit operators throughout the year. Many of you are also board members of the respective transit agencies throughout our county, and through those bodies, you receive updates on the service planning and operations at the ground level. So I won't be covering those aspects today. The purpose of this report is to give you a general overview, or a state of transit, if you will, from the 10,000-foot county level to describe how our services are doing, and to answer some key questions such as how much does transit service cost? How do we pay for it? Are we doing okay, i.e. Farebox, and where are we headed? Next slide. We have a pretty robust transportation network with 5 modes of transit: commuter rail, Vanpool, fixed route bus, paratransit, or better known as Dial-A-Ride, and specialized transit, operated mainly by the 8 transit operators that you see on the screen. Now, let's remember we are a large county covering over 7,200 square miles. That's larger than a couple of states like Rhode Island and Delaware, and comprises of a very diverse demographic in both urban and rural areas. Next slide. So how much does it cost to operate transit service in a county the size of ours? On average, just over about $150 million annually. About 65% of which is attributable to fixed route bus, 18% for demand response and specialized transit, 13% for Metrolink services, 4% to keep the 9 stations that RCTC owns and operates operated, and 1% for Vanpool services. Next slide. We are primarily paying for these services through state funds, which consists in a normal year of about 56% of revenue sources and includes TDA, local transportation funds, and state transit assistance, or STA funds. And federal and local funds are about equal, about 21-22%, and comes from formula FTA funds, CMAQ funds, passenger fares, and of course Measure A, and even a small amount from other local sources such as MSRC. And the smaller pie chart to the right is a glimpse of how this distribution was affected with the stimulus funds utilized in FY20. And as you can see, it did make a substantial shift in the federal share at 32%, saving us a significant amount of LTF funds in Measure A. Next slide. A key performance indicator in any transit system or network is Farebox Recovery. And you'll be happy to hear that we made it, at least at the county level, during the 3 years. However, there is a caveat in that FY20, when COVID started, did impact the last quarter of operations significantly. And while individual transit agencies may not have made Farebox, there was a Farebox waiver, which is still in place today. Next slide. There are major trends that can be highlighted as far as ridership goes. And with some ups and downs over the years, the main theme here is change and opportunity. The change, as most of you already know, since about 2014, ridership was declining and did so for about 4 years. This trend was not specific to our county. It was happening regionally and even nationally. Our county actually fared pretty well compared to other places. SCAG a few years back contracted with UCLA researchers who found that the primary reason for declining ridership was the increase in automobile purchases and usage. Nevertheless, our operators worked hard to implement various service improvements, increase services to attract a growing college and youth market. And in 2019, things were looking up, as you can see in the spike in 2019. We finally broke the trend, and in the first 3 quarters of FY20, ridership gains continued. Then COVID hit and stay-at-home orders were issued, which caused ridership to decline again in 2020. Next slide. And now comes the opportunity to look ahead. Our transit operators were diligently adjusting and modifying services as places reopened and have now entered the recovery phase. Safety and cleaning protocols remain the highest priority. Many great marketing initiatives are underway to regain ridership, such as free fares for youth and college students. And in some cities such as Beaumont and Banning and Palo Verde, they will be offering free fares for the general public for a portion of the year. And as with any major changing event, this is also an opportunity to pause and strategize to plan for the new normal. Sunline, for example, launched their refuel plan, which consolidated lower performing routes in order to build higher frequencies on the highest traveled corridors. Beaumont just completed a comprehensive operational analysis. PVVTA will be starting theirs in the coming months, and others such as Riverside Special Transportation and Banning are going to be focusing on their capital improvement programs, which should also lead to more efficient operations. Our own Vanpool program, as you will hear shortly, is also continuing their outreach and engagement with employers to regain ridership. And this is just a start. As new regulations such as zero emission transition matures, more technological advances will be seen, and our role will continue to be to ensure that operations are sustainable. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. Included in your staff report are fact sheets with more details by mode for your review. And again, this item is for receive and file.
Great. Any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any, so we'll go ahead, and this is receive and file. So we'll move on to item number 10, which
Pardon me.
Yes.
Pardon me, Commissioner Middleton, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I raised it at the end. I'm looking at the small bar chart regarding single occupancy vehicle trips eliminated. And a bit surprised that in 1920, we actually had fewer trips eliminated than we did in 1819. Could you talk a little bit about where this data comes from and what you think it's telling us?
Yeah, the main reason for that is because in 1819, the Vanpool program started in the last 2 months of the fiscal year. So there's only 2 months worth of data. And as far as how the data is calculated, I'm going to ask Brian Cunanan, who's our Vanpool program manager, to answer that one.
For the Vanpool program, each of the Vanpools have to record and report how many riders they have in the program. So it's real data that we get back from each of the Vanpools, and then we translate that data into trips reduced, vehicle VMT reduced, and GHG reduced.
So if there are 3 people in the Vanpool, then that's 2 trips that have been eliminated. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So this isn't really telling us how many fewer rides we have, just how many people we're getting into the Vanpool. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 10. Fiscal year 2021-22 Commuter Assistance Program recommendations. And Brian Cunanan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, commissioners. Name is Brian Cunanan. I'm the Commuter and Motorist Assistance Manager at RCTC. Fun fact on the motorist assistance side, FSP in Riverside County turned 28 today. So just wanted to share that with you. But it's a pleasure to be here this morning to present a series of recommendations related to the Commuter Assistance Program. Today, I'll be providing an overview of commuter assistance, the impact it has, and the impact we hope to amplify with recommendations going from a regional perspective and taking the last step towards a centralized regional rideshare database. Then we'll shift to a recommendation to address commuter assistance within Riverside County. And then finally focus on recommendations at the programmatic level to help optimize participation. Most might associate RCTC with funding and building key infrastructure, but the Commission also provides a suite of programs and services designed to help make the most of those transportation investments as well as the transit network. As an element of Western Riverside County Measure A, the Commission's Commuter Assistance Program, branded as iCommuter, focuses on work-based commutes by engaging, educating, and encouraging employee commuters to switching from driving alone to rail or transit arrangements when possible, carpool or vanpool if transit is not viable, or to telework, which is the ultimate for trip reductions and air quality. iCommuter is coordinated and co-funded in partnership with SBCTA and ultimately performed through consultant services. The Commission has contracted with WSP since fiscal year 16, and that effort has translated into significant reductions in vehicle miles traveled and emission reductions. This encapsulates the program objectives, which are to increase employer partners, reaching their employees and other commuters, engaging them, educating them on their transportation options available, and encouraging commuters to try alternative modes with incentives. That participation directly translates to reductions in drive-alone trips, VMT, and emissions. While converting participation into these stats is great, what's harder to translate is the significant impact a better commute has on an individual's quality of life. I can personally attest to this because in a former life, I had a 90-mile one-way commute to San Diego, spending 3 to 4 hours of my day in traffic, tired, stressed, and just miserable. My saving grace was getting into a carpool and being able to relax or sneak a nap in on the way home. Absolutely made all the difference in my quality of life. Unfortunately, having a long, stressful commute is a reality for a lot of people. It's estimated that more than 20% of working residents in our county have commutes that are 60 minutes or more. Focusing on the map to the left, we're all familiar with the imbalance in outbound commuters numbering 270,000. These are the individuals that need the most help and have the most to gain from discovering and trying a better commute. To enhance service to this group, in June 2019, the Commission approved the first step towards the centralized regional rideshare database. Phase 1 was completed in July 2020, and now all counties are using the same platform. However, there are still 2 separate databases, LA Orange Ventura database and an Inland Empire database. At the user level, the issue is that 2 different Riverside County residents commuting out of county and actively looking to be ride matched. These are people raising their hand and saying, I want a carpool or vanpool. These 2 may never connect because they may be in separate databases. And at the administrative level, the issue is that we have kind of a blind spot and we're not working with all the data available. Therefore, the next and final step, or phase 2, is to integrate the 2 databases into one centralized database with a target implementation of early 2022. Staff has been coordinating with partner agencies to finalize and seek approval for the following agreements, paving the way for implementation of phase 2. Starting with the 5-county regional rideshare MOU to merge and consolidate the 2 databases and establish guidelines in which the agencies will coordinate and operate in partnership with each other. Next, the regional rideshare software agreement authorizes SBCTA to make the regional rideshare software available to the CTCs for 3 years through fiscal year 24 at a total regional cost of $978,000, which is split on a population share basis. The commission share of which is $186,000 and includes $18,000 in contingency. Lastly, an amendment to the bi-county agreement with SBCTA to remove SBCTA's provision of rideshare and vanpool software to RCTC that will now be incorporated into the regional software agreement. This addresses recommendations at the regional level and now will be transitioning to county level recommendations. We don't want to leave anyone out, so staff is proposing expanding rideshare benefits to be more inclusive for Eastern Riverside County residents and employers. As mentioned previously, commuter assistance was implemented in Western Riverside County as a specific requirement under Measure A to help address congestion related to work-based commutes. While the Commission does make an effort to work with Coachella Valley employers through the iCommuter program, due to differences in Measure A funding streams, the $2 a day startup rideshare incentive is not available to commuter constituents outside of Western Riverside County. A consequence of this is that 1, the program's most popular rideshare incentive is not available to Eastern County constituents or employers that have employees that live in Eastern Riverside County. Secondly, this often leads to confusion and inequity for employers that have employees from Riverside County, but not eligible for the same incentive just because they live in different geographic areas of the same county. Staff is confident that expanding the incentives eligibility combined with a focused commuter assistance effort can help stimulate significant employer participation in rideshare activity in Eastern Riverside County. Therefore, staff is recommending adopting a new resolution that includes expanding eligibility of all incentives to Eastern Riverside County when funding is identified and available. If approved, staff will amend WSP's scope of work to include an Eastern County pilot for fiscal year 22. This effort is projected to cost $360,000 and includes WSP's labor as well as the incentives passed through directly to commuter participants. Based on the balance available in the WSP contract and projected expenses for fiscal year 22, no additional authorization is needed to accommodate the pilot expansion. Since Western County Measure A funds cannot be used for this effort, SAFE funds for which primarily fund motorist assistance such as FSP, Callbox, and 511 will be used and is already included in the recently adopted budget. Lastly, staff will be exploring longer-term funding options with the intent to establish a permanent countywide commuter assistance program beyond fiscal year 22. We've covered the regional and county level recommendations, and the last set of recommendations will be at the program level. In addition to adopting a resolution that supports a countywide program, the following set of programmatic recommendations seek to strengthen the rideshare incentives available with a goal of maximizing participation. First is replacing the $2 day incentive with a new $5 day incentive and also establishing a $125 max. This establishes a more compelling offering or hook while maintaining a cap commensurate with the current incentive. And since congestion is generated in both directions, staff recommends expanding eligibility to out-of-county residents on a temporary basis through fiscal year 22. This will also help all Riverside County employers jumpstart their rideshare efforts to all their employees, regardless of where they are coming from. Also included in the resolution for adoption are incentive adjustments to promote Vanpool participation. The first is to allow for concurrent participation in the $5 a day startup incentive, while also participating in a Vanpool subsidy. This will help with Vanpool formation or motivating commuters to transition from driving alone to joining an existing Vanpool. Lastly, staff recommends approving an extra $100 subsidy for EV Vanpool leases. Currently, Van Club Vanpools receive up to a $400 subsidy, and with this change would be eligible for up to $500 subsidy towards the lease of a zero emission Vanpool, which are more costly but do provide the highest emission benefit. Additionally, this update would put Van Club at parity with other local programs which offer a similar benefit. Concurrent with the approval of this EV benefit, staff will administratively amend the scope of work for current Vanpool vendors to reflect the additional subsidy amount. There's a unique opportunity in the next 6 to 12 months as employers and employees continue to transition back to a new normal. The Commuter Assistance Program seeks to expand its reach and assert itself in that process. Staff is confident that approval of the recommendations reviewed today will help amplify these efforts in fiscal year 22 and beyond. With respect to the fiscal impact, all expenses pertaining to the recommendations are reflected in the adopted budget, and staff does not anticipate requiring any contract cost modifications to the WSP contract or budget adjustments to support these recommendations. Lastly, staff will report on program performance related to the recommendations in early 2022, and I anticipate having some good progress updates to share at that point. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. We do have a couple hands raised. We'll start with Commissioner Condor. You're up. Chuck, I think you're on mute.
Well, I hit it twice. There we go. Better?
Yes.
Okay. Brian, thanks for the update. Kind of a curious question. Do the databases at all track age groups of those that do commute in the van pools?
They do not at the moment. In There was a time when we had that as a voluntary question asked, but not a lot of people wanted to participate and offer that information.
Okay, I'm just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, next is Commissioner Harnick. You're up.
Thank you, Chair. Great presentation. Thank you. And this is so promising for the Coachella Valley and throughout, of course, Riverside County. So I thank you for all the consideration that the Eastern Riverside County has gotten. But this is a perfect example of every time when we're talking about congestion and we say we can't build our way out of it. This is one of those programs that reflects a shift in thinking that will help get us where we need to go. So, of course, I support it. And if it's time, I would move to approve.
Thank you. I had a quick question for you, Brian. First of all, good report. Thank you. A lot of good information, but I need a little more understanding on the Rideshare incentive. How does that work? The $5, $2 Rideshare incentive. Can you just give me a little summary of how that works?
Sure. It's a startup incentive, and participants would get $5 a day for every day that they reported to Rideshare within a 3-month period, up to that new max that would be established, 125. The employer validates. We have an employer validate it, and they're distributed via gift cards to the employer has a choice between Target, Stater Brothers, and Amazon.
Okay, great.
Third
Thank
district offers a second to the motion.
Great. We have a motion and a second. And may we have a roll call, please?
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs,
Aye.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Riverside.
Aye.
Thank you. That item passes.
Thank you. We had no items pulled from the consent agenda, so we'll go ahead and move on to Commissioner's staff report. Opportunity for commissioners and staff to report on attending an upcoming meeting, conferences, and issues related to the commission's activities. And I see that Commissioner Middleton has her hand raised, so you're up first.
Thank you. I know many of you have been aware of AB 43, which passed out of the Assembly with only 2 no votes. This is the bill that would substantially change the way speed limits are set in California. That bill is actually garnering some substantial opposition in the state Senate. It will be heard at the Senate Transportation Committee on July 13th. It is an unusual combination of forces. The Police Officers Research Association and the California Association of Highway Patrolmen are opposed to making changes in how speed limits are set. They have been joined by the ACLU and the Western Center on Law and Poverty, which are concerned that any additional changes in the way that speed limits are set would result in greater traffic enforcement. And the belief there is that greater traffic enforcement will be disproportionately levied against individuals of color. If you are, whether you're a supporter or opponent of AB 43, I really do ask that you reach out to your state senator and to others regarding this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Washington, I see you have your hand raised also.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make my fellow commissioners aware of an item that was brought to my attention in a briefing this morning with us officers of the State Association of Counties. Assembly Bill 339, AB 339 is proposing some adjustments, amendments to the requirements for Brown Act meetings, of which this particular meeting is one. And I would encourage any city council members or anyone that has a connection with other agencies that operate under the Brown Act to review the proposed legislation. It mandates certain requirements for cities or counties over 250,000 residents. If you are under that, which most of our cities are, then you may still want to look at what requirements you might want to implement in your agency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. Anybody else?
What was that bill number, Supervisor?
AB, Assembly Bill 339.
Thank you.
All right, and do we have any reports from staff?
None, thank you.
Okay, great. Then we will move on to our next meeting, which will be on July 26th at 9:30. And we will adjourn at this point. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a